I cut those plates that I needed to cut out to fill this. It came out of those extensions that I chopped off the chassis. I've tacked this one in, but I've actually completed this one. So that's all blocked off, and this gusset's tied back into the chassis rail now. You know, it doesn't have to be 100% because it's not seen with this being fully fended, but it's, you know, all the weld's good, it's clean, and it's added a little bit of strength back into the chassis. The slight problem I had was because these extensions had a slight curve in it. The pieces that I took out of it to fill this, there is a curve in there as well, so it gets a little bit sits in a little bit deeper just on that middle section there, so you can't get it perfect. You'll see here where I've hit it with the flap disc and I've tried to grind it away. You can just see a little high spot there. Well, I can't get down in there because that's where the plate's bowing. You know, I can keep grinding and grinding and grinding until it's gone, but then I start thinning out the metal, and really there's no reason to grind it back. As I said, it's not seen, so yeah, that'll be fine. It's been an interesting day today. I got a few things done. I've got these pieces here welded in. Had some splits along here, basically where the floor joined here. It was just originally tacked with a spot, but they'd opened up and the whole cabin was coming apart, so I've had to weld right along there, and then the cowling had actually split all down the side here, so I welded that up, and it was pretty much the same on the other side. Got that in. Ooh, a bit warm still. Cowl, I had to weld that up. Here I had a massive split, but this section of it had pulled across, so it was actually overlapping, and I've tried everything to try and pull this bottom section back, and I got it really close, but just not close enough on the edge here. So I ran the angle grinder blade through the sheet metal to clean the little dags off, and then welded that back together. It's far from finished, but it's holding for now. I'm just not tall enough, and I've got nothing really that I can put on top of this chassis to stand on to get higher, and I'm not that far from the roof, as you can see. So when the cabin comes back over and sits on the chassis, this is all the sorts of stuff that I can get to and get my hammer and dollies in there and really belt it out and get a new flap disc and you know, smooth it all up. But I pretty much accomplished what I set out to do today. You know, I'm not at that stage where I'm doing the body work as such, but seeing I had good access to the areas that were split, I thought I'd weld those up, and that'll give the body a bit more rigidity as well when I start taking the wood out eventually. So yeah, as rough as it looks, it's never going to come apart, and yeah, I will smooth that up a bit later and get it looking nicer. One of the other things that I mentioned I was going to do was to get these cabin mounts in, and at the moment I've run out of time today, but I've just put a couple of tacks on each side, and I'll drill those holes out and bolt it up. I've done that on both sides now. So if I wanted to flip the cabin over now and put it down onto the mounts, I could, because they're in place. What else did I do today? Oh, finished these off. Welded these little side plates in today. Again, I've got to grind everything down, get it all looking good. I've just roughly taken the the sharp edges off it so I don't cut myself. But yeah, it's solid. Yeah, just got to clean it up. There's a bit of a look at those cabin mounting pieces from the back. So I've welded on both sides. So I've welded all the external corners, all the internal corners, all the edges. She's rock solid. Again, you know, it's not going to be seen by the time all the upholstery and carpet and trims and everything else goes in. You're never going to see this, and most likely the floor will be above this anyway. So yeah, it's more or less under the truck, if anything. Okay, I got the cabin flipped back over now. We've got them sitting on those mounts. Still haven't bolted them in, but I just couldn't wait. So flipped it back over and it's sitting nicely on there. And we move inside. That's sitting good there too, on both sides. Got to give it a little bit of a tap because that sheet metal there is just propping it up a little bit. But it does, it sits nice. I don't know if that's too dark to see, but I've had to unbolt my brake pedal in order to drop the cabin down over. You can see the two bolts there. So once the cabin's down, you've got access to bolt the mount back in. So the pedal's just sort of sitting there loosely at the moment, but I've still got enough clearance between the top of the pedal and the steering column, and that column's got to be pushed up as well. It's just sitting there as well. So you might be able to see there the drop from the top of the chassis. So it's come down a bit. It's done what it's supposed to do. My steering linkage is going to pass that exhaust manifold straight down through the gap, as I expected it would. So that's come off good too. Can't wait to get all the guards and stuff sitting back on it tomorrow, and the shroud, grille shroud, and just get an overall perspective of how much it has dropped. It'll be a hell of a lot, I'd say. Turns out I still got clearance there too. Not a hell of a lot, but I haven't had to cut the cabin yet. Only time will tell. Once all the guards go back on, then I'll know whether or not whether the cabin has to come forward slightly or go back slightly. This side obviously heaps of room because the heads are offset, but yeah, so far so good. Okay, that gives you a bit of an idea with a piece of board in there, just to replicate a floor pan. As you can see, when that goes in, it'll cover up these sections here, and that's got to drop a little bit, as I said before. The mounting frame for the console's a lot lower to the ground. Before, it would have been, I had it sitting on a couple of pieces of wood before. I had the console sitting on the pieces of wood like that, because this frame would have been sitting up here somewhere. So now that's brought that down closer to the floor pan, and it'll probably sit directly on the floor, which will be great. What else? Oh, I've got a problem. Now I've measured everything make sure it was correct. Now I've got a measurement of 95 millimeters from the back of here to this center hole on both sides, so I know the back of the cabin's perfect in relation to these old mounts, and they're in line with each other, so you know that distance has got to be right. When I take a measurement from here to the center here, it's different on that side. Now I can't work that out, because when I take a measurement from here to here, it's exactly the same on both sides. And as I was saying in some other videos, I think that this old seat base was not welded up properly. It's not a 90-degree square angle. It is on a slight taper, but I think it was still not built right. I've got the only conflicting measurement I've got is actually from here to here. Everything else seems to be right. I've remeasured the door openings from here to this metal point here on both sides. The door openings are identical. I measured from this steel brace to the front of the cowl. There's a couple of mil in it, but none of this is really fastened together. So, you know, there's a little bit of give there, but it's so close that I wouldn't consider that being an issue. Now, those new cabin mounts that I tacked on earlier, as you can see, it's out slightly. I sort of expected that, because they are different to the original ones that were there. And also, if I could, I wanted to move the cabin back just a couple of millimeters, just so that I had enough clearance there for that rocker cover, and that's what I've done. I've tapped it back about 5 millimeters, so that's why that's out now, because this was flush with the front of the cabin. But that's okay, because I'll just grind those tacks off and I'll move that back, and this one will be in the right position. Now, as it sits on both sides, I've taken a measurement from here to this center hole, and they're both identical. I've taken a measurement from here to this center, to the center of this hole, and it's identical. But if we go around this side and take a look at the bracket, it's out by a mile. Measurement from that center hole to the face of this is the same as the other side, and from this hole to the face of that is the same. I've put the square on it and squared up, and that is spot on. The other side's spot on, and I cannot work out for the life of me why this is so far back compared to the other side. Even if the cowl had a twist in it, you know, I shouldn't be getting exactly the same measurements for door openings, exactly the same measurements from the back of the cabin to the front of the windscreen opening. It's a little bit of a mystery. I'm going to take some more measurements tomorrow and double check everything to make sure that I'm not just tired of measuring things wrong. But if I was to put money on it, I'd say all my measurements are correct. Well, I've been writing them down as I've been checking them, and they are pretty much spot on. You can see the difference there. I thought maybe that other bracket was not plumb. I'd welded it in on an angle, causing the hole to expose itself. You know, I thought maybe that I'd roll the bracket like that, but it is plumb. It is plumb to the cabin. So yeah, I don't know what's going on. Okay, I'm running just a little bit of an experiment here. I've got my straight edge here, and I've got that lined up with the very corner here. Just let me put the camera down for a second. Okay, so I've got that lined up on the corner there, and it's hard up against these two braces, which are the same thickness. So if we have a look at where the square and this old seat brace intersect, you know, you can pretty much see that where it starts to slope down on a 45 is intersecting with the edge of the square. Now if we go over this side, and I do the same thing, I set that up right on the corner there, and it's hard up against them two braces. And we have a look at where the square intersects with the old seat brace. Well, the old seat brace is actually underneath this square, so they didn't weld it up too well or cut it and weld it up too well when they originally built the cabin. So if anything, this seat brace needs to come this way, probably about 10 millimeters, or the one on the other side would have to go out 10 millimeters for them to be identical. Yeah, my suspicions were right, but it still doesn't explain the front. It doesn't explain why the cowl's out. So, although I've identified something here, which isn't a major drama, I've got to try and work out why the front of the cowl's out. Okay, so next morning I've done a couple of little things on the cabin this morning just to get it to sit a little bit better. Had to trim up a few bits and pieces. Let's have a look. Let's get this torch going. I just had to take a little bit more out of off this plate here, just so it would clear these bolts. I had issues with the brake pedal mount bolts, which go in here and just behind here, but I also had trouble with the actual brake booster master cylinder bracket bolt as well, because as it was coming down it was hitting that, so I had to take a little bit more out of here, and it was also rubbing against the chassis, which is just going to cause a massive amount of squeaking. So I've done that on both sides. I got more clearance there. I didn't cut back beyond the original factory spot welds though, so that's still got its original spot welds in there. Another thing I was struggling with a little bit yesterday, simply because I hadn't cleaned anything up properly, was where they sat down over the chassis. All the internal welds, I hadn't ground them back, and I needed to sort of get in there and clean it up so that this would just drop over the chassis without having to force it. Yesterday I was just having to knock it down a little bit. Today it just slid straight over it, so that's good. Now I've put the one of the guards back on. I've only got one bolt in the front. Probably not the best way to do it. But I haven't yet drilled the other bolt holes in the in that guard support bracket yet. I've really only got that front one to rely on, but it's pulled up tight and I've blocked it up so it's sitting level, and the running board does have to drop a little bit. These are still in their original mounting positions, so yeah, just got to compensate a little bit for that. But yeah, everything seems to be sitting really well. Now I had this here set at 95 millimeters from this point to the center of this hole, and it gave me a lot of clearance around that rocker cover, which was great. But I thought I was going to have a bit of an issue with there being too much of a gap here between the cabin and the guard, and an extra 5 mil, I'm going to be able to get my little finger down in there. So I thought, okay, I'll move it back 5 millimeters and it should still give me clearance. So I've reduced that to 90 mil now, and we come around the side here. It still looks close, but there's clearance there, and I don't really expect my engine to be moving back that far. So, you know, there's clearance there. It's never going to hit, and I'm hoping I can get away with that. By moving it 5 mil, it helped with that bracket a little, but you know, I think I'm going to have to move that back. I don't know. I still don't know why, but I'm going to have to move that back. And this side, if you can see it, that actually ended up becoming flush with the front of the cab again. So, you know, that's exactly where I wanted it. And that bracket on the other side is supposed to be in exactly the same position. So I'd say somehow this cab's got a twist in it, and this cow's got a twist in it, and you know, most of that probably stemmed from there being a crack here. This was only a hairline. I decided to weld it up before it turned into a full-on split, but this side was fully split, and this, from this area here, this section here, this was actually pushed up over this sheet metal, and that's why I had to run the grinder blade through it to take the edges off it. I couldn't pull this bottom section back enough. To look at it by eye, it looks perfectly okay. It was really, really close to coming back, but in the end, you know, if I had forced it any more, I probably would have done more damage, and I wasn't prepared to damage this cowl because you just can't get them. It's not like a Ford or a Chev or a Dodge of the same year where you might be lucky enough to come across one on an old farm somewhere. You just aren't going to find these. You know, this is the only one I know of in the country, so yeah, there isn't much a welder can't fix, but I'm not going to take the chance of damaging all the side here, you know, because everything is obviously all pressed, and I'm not sure what the word is. I can't think of the word that they use for it now, but it's all, you know, it's all molded and stuff like that. I don't want all this getting out of shape too much, because I don't have the tools to be able to reproduce that if I stuff it up. So yeah, if it's just a matter of me having to move this bracket back to compensate a little bit for the cabin, so be it. Still got to sit the guard on this side though, because I've got to see. That'll be a good indicator as to how bad this is, you know, because if I sit the guard on and I use one of these same mounting holes as I've done on the other side, and I can get my hand down between the guard and the cowling, then I'm going to have to look at doing something else here, what I might have to do is I can't really open up the door opening. You know, that's got to stay the way it is because the door is the width the door is. But I don't know. If I need to do something, I'll find a way. Okay, as I've done in some previous videos, I'll put this old hood pin across the cowl and the radiator shroud, and you'll get an idea from that how much that cab's dropped. It's huge. The angle on that before was like that. Now it's where it should be. And I know I can't give you a really good frontal view of this at the moment because I've got the Chev in here and it's raining outside. I can't get nothing out, so hopefully you can see that well enough to see how far that cab's dropped. It's great. Beautiful thing is too, the panel that goes in here, the balance panel, you know, that's obviously reduced in size now. You know, 65 millimeters is tongue-tied again today. 65 millimeters of that's got to come out. But I'm going to build new ones of these anyway. I'm going to try and get. It was very much one piece that ran from here to the end of the cab, and then it had a right angle fold on it, 90-degree fold, and then there was another piece, but then was set up the same 90-degree fold on each end, and then it bolted through that one. I want to try and get something that's one piece and that flows. And I've got a mate of mine, Mike, who did all the engine mounts, put all the engine mounts in for me and did a bit of boxing on the chassis. He's got a folding machine, a folding brake, and I'll go down to his workshop and get some new ones of those made up, and all we'll do is we'll fold it in one piece and then we'll pie cut the top and then just bend it round to suit, and when we found the profile we want, then we'll just weld that pie cut up, and then that gives me one continuous flowing panel there rather than having two pieces. You know, the more pieces you bolt together, the more chance you've got of vibration and squeaking. So if I can do away with a two-piece, I will, and I'll build a one-piece. Again, I got all the templates for it, so it's not going to be a hard job. As you can see up there, there's one of them. There's the other one still bolted to a running board. So I got those. It's a bit of a look at the cab from the back. Now it sits over the chassis well there. Still got to clean all this up yet. As you can see there, yesterday I tried to, oh god, it's thick. I tried to bend that back a bit more. You know, I should have followed my original line of 80 mil, but I didn't. When I decided to go 65 mil, I just went up from the bottom to 65 mil and bent it there. Should always bend a little bit more because you can always bend it back. There's nothing worse when you lower the cabin down and you find that, you know, it's sitting on the plate, the mounting plates that you built, but you know, the sheet metal stopping it from dropping all the way, and then you've got to tip the cabin back over and try and cut it, and it's awkward. Yeah, so we're getting there. We're getting there. I've got all the guards sitting back on now. It doesn't look bad. I haven't had to really force anything. And the concerns that I had over this guard here aren't that bad. Like it's touching on the corner here, but I'm pretty sure it's touching on the corner on the other side too. So yeah, they're touching in exactly the same spot, which is the inner edge. They're okay here. They're just touching on the inner edge. So that won't be an issue when I cut these panels down and put these panels back in. I'll just re-drill the hole in here, and I'll just sort of just bend that guard just down a little bit, and that side panel will hold that bend in the guard. But it's come up pretty good. For me, just being a backyard guy, backyard hot rod builder, I'm pretty happy with that. You know, I'm getting there, learning a bit more every day. I think I know it all, boy. Haven't built the Chev, but nah. Every build's different. Every build's different. So just keep chipping away and see how far we get today. And yeah, hopefully by the end of the year I'll have this to a point where I can actually sit inside the cabin, start it up, put it in gear, and at least roll it down the driveway, which would be great. Cheers. Okay, I've just popped the door on with a couple of clamps and just dropped the bonnet on, or the hood on top. Give you a bit of a overall view of what it's going to look like now that it's all dropped. It looks pretty tough. The way it's sitting at the moment, for some reason it seems to look wider than it did when it was sitting higher. That's good, low and fat. So yeah, no, I'm happy. And everything is sitting where it should, and nothing's really bolted up. You know, all this is pretty good considering it's just all sitting there. Nothing's bolted in. You know, and the gaps are the same on both sides, and you know, this hood has to be welded up down the center, but it's, you know, the distances are good. The gaps, you know, right around, they're all even. So it's yeah, it's coming together quite well. I just wanted to test my theory about the console sitting inside the cabin really good. I've just got this old piece of carpet out the back of a station wagon, and just use that for lying down on the concrete floor when it's cold. But I'll just pop that in there just to sort of make it look as if there's carpet in the cabin. There's a full floor in there. And yeah, that console's actually sitting nice. It's sitting nice there, so you know, I've got to just adjust a few things, but that's sitting up against the dash, and it's pretty much self-supported by the floor pan. So yeah, should all be good. Another job I've completed is I've drilled the holes for the back mounting points. That was our original mounting point there off the side of the chassis. These are the plates I welded in to bridge the chassis, and I've just gone straight down through the guts of them. I've got great access from underneath the truck to get to the bolts. Very simple, didn't have to stuff around with anything, just using a 10mm bolt in there, which is adequate. I think there may have originally been a 1/2 inch or roughly 13mm bolt holding these in. It was a very different setup though. As you can see, there's a lot of holes here and here and here. They had, if I remember rightly, they had some sort of U-bolt assembly. I can't remember how it was all set up now, but yeah, they used a U-bolt. I remember cutting through them with the angle grinder, but that's going back 1996, I think, when I first bought the truck and dismantled it. So yeah, this is a lot simpler. No, straight through it. One issue I've come across, and to be quite honest, it's not really an issue, but I'm gonna fix it anyway because engineers are fussy. My brake pedal has heaps of clearance in relation to the steering column, but they don't actually look at it from the perspective of the top of the pedal to the base of the column. They look at it when your foot's on the pedal, whether your toes are going to hit the column or not. It's very unusual that your toes will be below the pedals, especially on a pedal that comes up through the floor. So what I'm going to do is, rather than cut the pedal down, which we've re-welded to try and make it look as if it's factory, so they don't want me to go get things x-rayed and stuff like that for strength, I'm just going to drop the original mount back down a little bit. That might mean that, I hope you can see it, it's not too dark, this bracket here, it's got a pin in the bottom of it which hooks up to the bar that comes out of the brake master cylinder, or the brake booster. Might have to actually just move that pin up a little bit, so grind the weld off the back, drill another hole, move the pin up. As the bracket goes down, the pin's got to come up. But that's a hell of a lot easier than cutting down this pedal, because I've got really good travel and it's on a nice angle, and I don't want to interfere with that. So I'll just drop it. Doesn't need to be dropped much, and the way that original mount is sitting now, that is higher than its original mounting point. So basically I'm going to be dropping it down or back into its original mounting position. So that should all work out good. Such a shame, because for me personally, that's heaps of clearance. I got little feet, so my foot's not going to get in the way. But if this truck's ever sold on at a later date, somebody else buys it with big flippers, the problem could be that their foot might just clip the column, which doesn't allow you to depress the pedal as far down as you would need to. You'd have to sort of slide your foot down the pedal pad in order to get full brake travel. And if it's an emergency situation where you have to brake quick, there's a couple of seconds can mean the difference between you pulling up or you slamming into the back of another vehicle. So to keep Mr. Engineer happy, I'll drop that mount a little bit.